Hello, Colorado. I'm Montana, Director of Marketing here at Maverick, and I have a very special guest for us today, the amazing Lizzy Butler from Vine Connections, which, as you guys know, is our amazing South American portfolio. So we have beautiful Argentinian and Chilean wines from Lizzy, and she is one of my favorite people to talk wine and spend time in general with because you're the coolest. And we've had so many great memories together, but now we're not traveling, and that's what we like to do together. So we have to do it a little bit differently this time. And I've always really wanted to go on the South America trip with Vine Connections. It hasn't happened yet, maybe someday, but in the meanwhile, we thought we'd bring everybody else along that wants to go on this trip too and do it through wine, our favorite thing.
Montana, I'm so happy to see you. It's lovely. I love seeing all you're doing in your backyard always. So thank you for welcoming us to your home, and B, the Maverick world. You guys are the best. I miss you dearly. So this we'll have to do to bridge the gap between when I last saw you and when I can see you next. So I'm thrilled to be here, and there's no better time than right now. I think we've all been, being at home, we're all grateful to be safe and healthy, but I think being wine lovers, we always have this thirst for wanderlust and to travel and to understand these places where the wines come from. So we do this all the time, but especially in these last couple of months, I really have been traveling via wine. And having lived in South America and leading trips there every year, there truly is nothing that I've experienced as more life-changing than a road trip through the Andes on the Chilean side and on the Argentine side. So that's
I can only imagine. We've been exploring the Colorado mountains, and I just think about that place. So you're going to show me.
Yes. I lived in Colorado before South America, and it gives me goosebumps, honestly. Like the Rockies and the Andes have a very kindred soul, and so I love talking to people from Colorado with the wines because they can have more of a visualization of the feeling of what mountain wines really feel like. So for the setup today, for our road trip, we have 4 wines to taste together and 4 different regions to visit. So we're going to start in Chile, and we're going to visit 2 wineries and 2 regions. Then we're going to hop over the Andes and head to Mendoza in Argentina. And we have 2 different wines from the Mendoza region, 2 different winemakers, amazing female winemakers on the Argentine side we'll talk about today. So lots to cover. I'm ready. I'm ready to rock. I know, me too. Well, as you know, Montana, I mean, we're both very big wine nerds, and I think there's nothing better than learning about maps of wine regions. And if we're going to go on a road trip, then we got to have a map, right? So I would love to just give a really quick 101 of the map of Chilean wine and the map of Mendoza wine to give a little more visual of where we're going. So we're starting on the Chilean side. So basically, Chile and Argentina are the southern part of the continent of South America. It's the southern cone, if you will. It's like a triangle. And on the eastern side is Argentina. It's a much bigger area country. And then on the western coast, the long, skinny country of Chile is the west coast of the southern part of the continent. The natural barrier and border between Chile and Argentina are the Andes Mountains. So it's really significant when you look at the full map of South America, and especially these 2 countries. The Andes are the long, skinny spine that goes up and down the continent, and it's the longest and second highest mountain range in the world, which is incredibly significant. So, and when you look at the wine regions of Chile as well as Argentina, especially Argentina because it's wider, the majority of wine regions in Argentina are to the west of the country, which means they're right up against the mountains. That means everything really gravitates back to that mountain range. So everything from soil to climate to geology to history to culture and evolution all really ties back to that mountain range. So it's very much a heart and a soul of both the stories of Chile and Argentina, and especially the evolution of wine. So it's kind of crazy to me for anyone to learn about wines from Chile and Argentina and not understand the Andes Mountains. So that's where we kind of start always. And so if we go to the Chilean side, the length of Chile as a wine region is essentially the same width as the United States. So that is an incredibly long country. The average width, though, is about 120 miles. So that is crazy skinny. So, the dream of Californians, you can, ski in the day and surf at night or do the opposite. It's like almost too achievable in Chile. But it's a really useful imagery, right? So if you look at the country of Chile, it's a long, narrow Pacific coastal region wine area that has the Pacific to the west, a Central Valley in the middle, and mountains to the east. That is California, right? So, but Chile, think of that sort of context and orientation, but elongated and on steroids, right? So instead of the Sierras, you have the Andes, and instead of the Pacific of California, it's even colder to the south with the Humboldt Current coming up the side from Antarctica. So it's an incredible experience of nature and the extremities of nature when you go to Chile, especially. So the really centered in the middle third of the country. So the current map of Chilean wine appellations is about 1,200 miles going north to south. What's really cool about that is that distance is exactly the same distance as our west coast of the United States. So really, if you think of Chilean wine and our west coast, they overlap in distance delta. But now we're south of the equator in Chile. So essentially the winemaking regions of Chile are like our west coast flipped upside down and on steroids. Like,
but that helps so much. It helps
wine,
to understand it a lot.
Totally. When that orientation is kind of made, that comparison, the light bulb kind of goes off, right? Yeah. So that gives a little bit of orientation. The amazing thing about representing the portfolio we have from Chile is that we represent the most appellation-based portfolio of Chilean wine in the US. So when we go down to Chile, we truly road trip almost the entire length of California because we represent so many different valleys going north to south. And each winery we represents their specific valley very much in the expression of varietal and style of wine. So there's never overlap between wineries because they're so specific to that specific valley. So it's an incredible experience. And essentially you're going from the edge of the driest desert in the world, which is the Atacama to the north, all the way down to the edge of the Lake District in Patagonia. Everything in between is some of the most beautiful landscape you'll ever see, and the wines speak to that. So that's kind of the Chile 101. As we hop over the Andes to Argentina, literally the flight you take is you get in the airport in your airplane in Santiago. You fly almost directly across parallel the Andes Mountains to Mendoza. The entire flight is about 45 minutes to an hour. It is over the Andes Mountains. It is like a sea of Andes mountain peaks below you when you look out the window. It's like, if you want any mountain porn videos in your life, like go take this trip and look out the window. You can see Aconcagua, which is the highest peak in the Andes, which is the second highest outside of the Himalayas at about 23,000 feet. It's unbelievable. But the coolest thing about living kind of the California Mediterranean climate in Chile, where you always kind of need a jacket at night, you get more moisture, you land in Mendoza, and if you literally cut the Andes in half like a cross section, you have the moisture coming off the ocean in the Chilean side, hitting the wall of the Andes. And what that creates on the other side of any mountain range is the rain shadow, something called a rain shadow. So when people hear Mendoza, they often learn that it's a desert. And that the reason why is because it's a rain shadow effect from the Andes, from the moisture from the Chilean side. So in contrast, Mendoza is first a drier area in general. It's like Colorado, over 300 days of summer, of sun per year. And you've got that beautiful blue sky, literally the color of the Argentine flag, that celestial blue is after that sky, that color sky, and that clarity. There's such little humidity that the clarity you see in Mendoza is amazing. What it also alludes to is a really important element of winemaking, which is irrigation. So you have irrigation in Chile, but you can also dry farm from the natural rainfall. That is not possible in Mendoza. So all of the irrigation for vineyards in Mendoza is fed by the snow melt off of the Andes Mountains.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so cool. I mean, literally when we talk about mountain wines, it's not only elevation, which we'll discuss, but it's the life force of water coming off of the mountains. And it's not just for vineyards, it's for humans also. I mean, the life-giving force that the mountains are is literal. So you have that element, and then you also need to take into consideration that the base level elevation, like the city of Mendoza, is at about 2,500 feet. base elevation. So all the vineyards are essentially up from there. So it always makes me laugh. Californians are like, oh yeah, we have mountain fruit. And it's like, maybe 2,000 feet, maybe.
Right, because those are some of the highest vineyards in the world, right?
Exactly. So Mendoza, you're going to get anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 now plus feet. Salta is the area farther north of Mendoza in the desert of Argentina. That's where you're getting the 10,000 foot vineyard areas there, which are some of the highest in the world. So there are definitely wines that get high in the Mendoza side, and that creates an enormous effect on viticulture. So when you go up in elevation, you're getting different soil types, of course, with the Andes orientation, but then you're also getting closer to the sun. So the sun intensity and luminosity in the grapes really affects the expression of the wines based on where it's planted. And you're also getting different temperature variations. So the diurnal shift as you go higher up in elevation gets really dramatic. So although it's a desert with high sun, you're also getting cold temperatures. So it's such a unique area to ripen a vineyard in a place like Mendoza. So, I mean, overall, that's a general overview of both regions. But I would say in Mendoza, there's a lot of subregions. The main two I usually like to review is Luján de Cuyo versus the Uco Valley. Luján de Cuyo, a little more classic, traditional region near the city of Mendoza, a little bit farther east. Compared to the Uco Valley, it's farther south and farther west. As we're in Mendoza now, as you go west, you're actually going up in the Andes. So it's a generally higher elevation area, generally newer to the game of exploration for Argentine wine in the last 20 or so years, save for some older vines in the Uco Valley. So I think the name of the game of the future for Argentina is defining more of the regionality within Mendoza, not just considering it just one kind of chocolate and vanilla style of wine. There's a ton of nuance when you start to understand the terroir on a more microscopic level. It really makes me want to travel there with you, Montana. Like I'm getting all psyched up. I can't wait we're gonna do it one day, of course.
Someday when we can, we will.
Yes, exactly. And what I love too is that it's amazing when I do talk to customers, whether in person or virtually, there's such a wanderlust. And I think a lot of people go for adventure travel. They want to go to Patagonia, they want to hike, they want to kayak, they want to fly fish. All those things are still applicable. But I would say in the last 15 years, the food and wine element has definitely come more into play and intertwined with that. So there's been such an increase of interest of food and wine travel, gastronomic travel for Mendoza, for Chile. And I always say it's going to be the trip of your life. So I highly encourage everyone to get that on their bucket list.
Well, and I think you're like me, because the best trips are like, if you're a wine nerd, then, you know, you want to go see vineyards and visit wineries and see different types of things. But also I always want to like put in a little bit of the culture and the like, you know, the hiking, and in this case, like all the outdoor activities. So to be able to do both of those things in one day and like have it all, it's just like, it just sounds epic.
It's the dream. I mean, when people say they might not come back when they're down there, like I actually believe them. I've actually had people on some of my trips that don't return. I'm not even joking. That happened once. I was like, oh, I got to tone down the inspiration here.
A little less fun, Lizzy. A little less fun, please.